Hi, I'm Kenny. As we all know that, as a foreign national, you need to apply for a study permit to study in Canada. But can you study without a valid study permit? In this video, I will introduce several scenarios when you can study in Canada without a valid study permit. Now let's start. The first scenario comes from Section 2 of Article 30. It stipulates that every minor child in Canada, other than a child of a temporary resident not authorized to work or study, is authorized to study at the preschool, primary, or secondary level. This means all minor children in Canada are authorized to study, with an exception. The children of those parents who are temporary residents and not authorized to work or study cannot study in Canada without a valid study permit. This may look simple, but it can be tricky to apply to the reality. For example, if you enter Canada illegally without any visa or ETA, or although you have a valid visit visa, but you overstayed your status by a couple of times, can your child study in Canada without a study permit? Let's examine this case together. As the first step, because the parent is not an authorized temporary resident as per the IRPA, therefore, this exception is not applicable to him, and consequently, the child can study in Canada without a study permit. Quite surprising, isn't it? Now let's look at other cases. This is Article 188 of the IRPR. It stipulates 4 scenarios when a foreign national may study in Canada without a valid study permit. I will only examine subsection C of Section 1 because this is the most common cases in reality. It stipulates that if the duration of their course or program of studies is 6 months or less and will be completed within the period for their stay authorized upon entry into Canada. Therefore, under this clause, you can study a program of no more than 6 months without a study permit, as long as you can complete it by the end of your authorized stay. For example, you have a visit visa and enter Canada. Normally, you can stay up to 6 months, so you can study a program, let's say, of 5 months. Or if you start the program right on the day or the next day of your arrival, you can study a program of 6 months, so that you can complete it by the 6th month. In this case, you don't need a study permit. In some cases, you hold a visit visa and enter Canada. You received a visit record that authorized you to stay in Canada for more than 6 months. For example, if you are a mom accompanying your child to study in Canada, and you are authorized to stay in Canada for 1 year when you enter Canada, you can start a program of no more than 6 months at any time during the first 6 months from your arrival. In this case, you can complete it by the end of the first year, so you don't need a study permit. Now let's make this case a little bit more complicated. For example, you renewed your visit record by the end of the first year, and you received a new record that is valid for another year. Can you study a program in your second year of stay in Canada when you can still complete it within your authorized stay of the second year? The answer is no, you cannot, because in that clause, the period of authorized stay is limited to the period authorized when you enter Canada only. So the later renewal doesn't count. What if you just want to study a program of no more than 6 months in your second year of stay? Well, you can leave Canada and re-enter Canada. If your new visit record is not changed and remains the same, or you are issued a new visit record for another year upon your entry, you can start such a program as long as you can complete by the expiry date of the new visitor record. Although in these cases, you don't need a study permit to study in Canada, you may still want to apply for a study permit for some benefits. For example, in some provinces, you can access to the public health system with a study permit. You can obtain a driver's license. You can use some banking services. Or even in some places, you can buy a house with a study permit. Can you do that? Let's look at the law again. The subsection 2 of this article says, despite paragraph 1c A foreign national may apply for a study permit before entering Canada for a course or program of studies of a duration of 6 months or less. Therefore, you can still apply for a study permit in this case. Besides these scenarios, there is another very common one, that is when your study permit expires, you can continue your study without a valid study permit. Let's check it out. Article 189 says, a foreign national who has made an application under subsection 217(1) is authorized to study without a study permit until a decision is made on the application. If they have remained in Canada since the expiry of their study permit and continue to comply with the conditions other than the expiry date set out on the expired study permit. This means that after your study permit expired and you have submitted an application to renew it, before there is a decision on your application, you can continue your study without a valid study permit as long as you remain in Canada since the expiry of your previous study permit, and you comply with the conditions on your study permit except the expiry date. But if you leave Canada and re-enter Canada, you cannot study until your renewal application is approved. Here comes a question. Can I change my college when my study permit bears a name of a college on it? Do I need to apply for a new study permit or what? Well, in the past, it used to be okay for you to change a college as long as your study permit is still valid. But it is not so anymore in 2025. In next video, I will explain about this change with more details. So stay tuned. I'm Kenny. Learn my lessons on your way to Canada. See you in next video.